With a bit of light on the heated topic of climate change, I'm Larry Souder. We once interviewed a climatologist who said if we really knew what to do about global warming, we would have done it by now. We all want to reduce pollution, but we still want to heat our homes. So what's the best way to generate energy, considering the costs and the environmental impact?
Well, right now, there is no perfect energy source.
Dr. Matthew McCawley is a professor at West Virginia University and a former Public Health Service officer with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
If you look even at something like solar, the chemicals that it takes to make the solar panels are toxic and have some toxic residue associated with them. The windmills kill off animals, birds, and bats in the areas where they're operating. Everybody's too familiar with the effects of coal-fired power plants and the amount of pollution that you get from that. And in fact, even if you have a natural gas-fired boiler, again, it's going to produce nitrogen oxides, which have a toxicity to them. And in fact, the nitrogen oxides also could be converted with sunlight to these ultrafine particles. There is no perfect solution at this point.
Even nuclear power is still a long way off.
A lot of people talk about fusion as some distant promise, but it, as best as I can tell, and actually I've had some dealings with the nuclear industry, it's still decades off before we get to that.
Dr. McCawley says we need an energy policy that considers everything.
There's a problem if you think about global warming and you're going to prevent global warming by now making a lot more toxic products to prevent CO2 being given off for the global warming.
So Dr. McCawley says we need to come up with sensible solutions that in some cases will have trade-offs.
But we have to understand what those are, and we cannot do it blindly, because that's what's been done before. Years ago, I fought against a hazardous waste incinerator because the EPA thought that incinerating hazardous waste was a good way of getting rid of it. Well, it was a very short-sighted way of getting rid of it, because the stuff that went up the stacks of these incinerators was things like dioxin, which is one of the most carcinogenic substances known to humans. And so you don't want to trade off a solution that's worse for one that is simply bad.
McCawley says we need to have a discussion based on fact, not fancy.
We have to have a discussion in which the science and what the science knows about something is made available to everybody in an understandable form.
As a teacher at West Virginia University for 40 years, Dr. McCawley takes his responsibility to make things understandable to his students seriously.
Because they have a duty as the future scientists in this world to make things understandable to the population as a whole. And it's a very serious duty, because if we don't have that knowledge, we'll make lots of mistakes in our decisions.
McCawley says scientists don't know yet what are the most effective solutions to deal with climate change.
We have some solutions, and we're trying some solutions. And sometimes in science, you make a first attempt, you study the effect of what's happened, and then you go back and you make a better second attempt, and a third attempt if you have to. And that's the process that we're kind of going through. And it's the process that we need the information to make those decisions and to make the next best effort worthwhile.
In addition to the cost of possible solutions, there's also the possibility of unintended consequences.
We don't want to produce a lot of ultrafine particles. We don't want to see a lot more cancers. We don't want to see a lot more heart disease and say, okay, that's what we have to do to prevent global warming.
Dr. McCawley believes there are possible solutions if we're thoughtful about it.
We have to be thoughtful. We have to respect one another and respect others' ideas. But then we have to say, this is what we know to be the truth in this situation. And this is where we're guessing. And let's make it clear what we know, what we're guessing about, and what we're willing to try.
Dr. McCawley is a specialist in air pollution. He's developed air sampling equipment that monitors air and noise pollution at natural gas drilling sites and at mountaintop coal mining sites. For WPEL, I'm Larry Souder.